Have you ever stopped to properly look at the coins in your purse or pocket? They're not just little bits of metal we use to buy a pint of milk or a newspaper. Oh no, they're so much more than that. Each one is a tiny metal history book, a miniature work of art that tells a story stretching back over 2,000 years. From the very first strange, lumpy coins made by Celtic tribes to the shiny new ones bearing the portrait of King Charles III, British coins are a direct link to our ancestors. They show us who was in charge, what they believed in, and how life has changed in these islands. They are a tangible connection to the past, handled by generations before us. Think about it for a moment. A Roman soldier might have used a coin with his emperor's face on it to buy bread in a bustling Londinium market. A Tudor merchant would have counted his silver shillings, perhaps worrying about the king debasing the currency. A Victorian factory worker might have cherished a newly minted penny, a symbol of the vast and powerful British Empire. These objects have witnessed wars, plagues, revolutions, and incredible inventions. They have been hidden from invaders, saved up for a special treat, and passed down through families. They are silent witnesses to the grand sweep of British history, from epic royal dramas to the quiet, everyday lives of ordinary people. These coins are also a fabulous gallery of royal portraits. They track the changing faces of our monarchs, from the stern profiles of medieval kings to the familiar, graceful image of Queen Elizabeth II that we knew for so long. The way these rulers are shown tells us a lot about how they wanted to be seen. Were they presented as powerful warriors, devout Christians, or patrons of the arts and sciences? The symbols and words that surround them, the famous legends, add another layer to the story. They declare a monarch's titles, their claims to territory, and even their relationship with God. It's all there if you know how to look. So, as we embark on this epic journey through the history of British coinage, let's remember what these little objects truly represent. They are a chronicle of power, a measure of economic fortune, and a reflection of national identity. They show us the evolution of art and technology, from hand-hammered discs to precisely machine-struck masterpieces. They connect us to the biggest events and the most famous people in our island story. Let's dive in and unlock the secrets held by these fascinating pieces of metal, starting right at the very beginning, long before the Romans ever set foot on British soil. Long before the idea of Britain even existed, the Celtic tribes that inhabited these lands had their own form of money. Around 100 BC, they started making the very first coins used here. These weren't neat, round and uniform like the ones we use today. They were often cast from gold, silver, or a bronze-like alloy called potin, and they were wonderfully abstract. Inspired by coins from the continent, particularly those of Philip II of Macedon, the Celtic moneyers created their own unique designs. They would take a familiar image like a horse or a human head and break it down into a stunning pattern of swirls, dots and crescents. Each coin was a tiny piece of tribal art. These early coins, known as staters, weren't really for popping down to the shops. Their value was probably more symbolic than practical. They were a way for powerful tribal chieftains to show off their wealth and authority, to pay their elite warriors, and perhaps to make offerings to their gods. Finding a hoard of these Celtic coins gives archaeologists a fantastic clue about where a powerful tribe lived and the extent of their influence. The designs varied from tribe to tribe, so a coin from the Atrebats in the south would look quite different from one made by the Corialtalvi in the East Midlands. They were a declaration of identity in a fragmented land. Then, in AD 43, everything changed. The Romans arrived, and they didn't just bring soldiers and roads, they brought their own highly organized monetary system. Suddenly, the abstract Celtic coins were replaced by a flood of Roman currency. These coins were a world away from the local designs. They were mass-produced, standardized, and carried clear, powerful messages. You could find gold auri, silver denarii, and brass or copper sestertii and asses circulating all over the new province of Britannia. This wasn't just money, this was propaganda, a daily reminder of who was now in charge of the island. Every Roman coin was a mini billboard for the emperor. His portrait would be on one side, often looking strong and godlike. On the other side, you might find an image celebrating a military victory, the goddess of peace, or a new building project in Rome. For the first time, people in Britain were using money that connected them to a vast international empire. A farmer in Britannia could be using the very same type of coin as a merchant in Egypt or a legionary in Gaul. This new money helped to unify the province, making trade easier and embedding Roman culture into the very fabric of daily life. After the Romans packed up and left Britain around AD 410, their sophisticated monetary system collapsed. The economy went backwards, and for a while, people returned to a system of barter, trading goods and services directly without the convenience of coins. It was a time of great upheaval, with new groups of people, the Angles, Saxons and Jutes, arriving from northern Europe. For about 200 years, coinage largely disappeared from everyday life. But slowly, as powerful new Anglo-Saxon kingdoms began to emerge from the chaos, the need for a reliable currency returned. The first Anglo-Saxon coins were inspired by what had come before, initially copying Roman and continental designs. The real breakthrough came in the 7th century with the reintroduction of silver coins, which would become the backbone of the English economy for centuries. These early coins were small, thick and known as sciatas. They featured a wonderful and eclectic mix of designs, including strange beasts, stylized portraits and Christian symbols like the cross, reflecting the recent conversion of the Anglo-Saxon kings to Christianity. Then, towards the end of the 8th century, a larger, thinner coin was introduced that would dominate for the next 500 years, the silver penny. Kings like Offa of Mercia minted beautiful and influential pennies, some of which even copied the designs of gold dinars from the Islamic world, showing just how connected Dark Age England was. The penny was a statement of royal power. By law, only the king could issue coins, and his name and portrait on them guaranteed their value. This helped powerful kings to unify their territories and control the economy. Mints were set up in important towns and burghs across the country, and each coin would state where it was made and who the moneyer was. This was a clever bit of quality control. If a coin was found to be underweight or impure, the moneyer responsible could face a very grim punishment, like having his hand chopped off. It was a brutal but effective way to maintain public confidence in the currency. Then came the Vikings. From the late 8th century onwards, these Norse raiders and settlers had a huge impact on Britain, eventually establishing their own kingdom in the north and east of England, known as the Danelaw. They too minted coins to control their territory. Some Viking coins imitated Anglo-Saxon designs, while others featured their own symbols like Thor's hammer or swords and banners. For a time, 2 sets of coins circulated, but the silver penny remained the standard. Ultimately, it was the Anglo-Saxon kings of Wessex, like Alfred the Great and his successors, who triumphed, uniting the country and creating a single national currency based firmly on their powerful silver penny. When William the Conqueror and his Normans stormed across the Channel in 1066, they didn't overhaul the coinage system. They were actually rather impressed with the well-organized Anglo-Saxon mints and the reliable silver penny, so they kept it. However, they made one very important change. They put their own faces on the coins. The portrait of the king holding a sword was a clear and stark message to the conquered population about who was now the boss. For the next few hundred years, the silver penny continued as the workhorse of the English economy, though its design was updated with each new monarch, creating a fascinating timeline of medieval royal portraits. Life for the humble penny was not always easy. One of the biggest problems throughout the medieval period was the rampant crime of clipping. Because the coins were made of precious silver, sneaky individuals would shave or clip tiny slivers from the edges of the coins before passing them on. Over time, these clippings could be melted down into a valuable lump of silver. This meant that many coins in circulation became smaller and lighter than they should have been, which undermined public trust. To combat this, King Henry III introduced a new long cross design in 1247, where the cross on the reverse stretched right to the edge of the coin, making any clipping instantly obvious. The Tudor period, beginning in 1485, brought some truly magnificent additions to England's coinage. Henry VII, wanting to project an image of immense power and stability after the Wars of the Roses, introduced a spectacular new coin, the gold sovereign. Worth 20 shillings, it was the largest and most valuable coin yet made in England. It showed the king enthroned in majestic splendour on one side and the royal Tudor rose on the other. His son, Henry VIII, also introduced the first shillings and testoons, which were the first English coins to feature a realistic, lifelike portrait of the monarch rather than a stylized one. However, Henry VIII is also famous for something far less impressive, the Great Debasement. Needing vast sums of money to fund his extravagant lifestyle and his wars with France and Scotland, he came up with a cunning but disastrous plan. He ordered the mints to reduce the amount of precious metal in the coins, replacing it with cheaper base metals like copper. People quickly noticed that the new silver coins would wear away, revealing the copper underneath, which earned the king the unflattering nickname Old Copper Nose. This debasement caused massive inflation and economic chaos, which took years for his children, Edward VI and Elizabeth I, to painstakingly sort out and restore confidence in the nation's money. The Stuart era, which began with James I in 1603, saw huge leaps forward in the art and technology of coin-making. The old method of hammering a piece of metal between two dies was gradually replaced by new machinery. Screw presses, first introduced from France, could produce coins that were perfectly round, with much clearer and more detailed designs than ever before. This was the age of Nicolas Briot, a brilliant French engraver who came to work at the Royal Mint and produced some of the most beautiful coins ever seen in Britain. His portraits of King Charles I are masterpieces of realism and artistry, capturing the monarch's character in intricate detail. This period was also marked by the turmoil of the English Civil War, and the coinage of the time reflects that deep division. With the country split, both the king and parliament needed to pay their armies, leading to the creation of fascinating emergency money. Royalist strongholds under siege, like Newark and Pontefract, produced their own crude coins from melted-down silver plate. Some were diamond-shaped, others octagonal, and they were stamped with simple designs declaring their loyalty. Meanwhile, after the execution of Charles I, the new Commonwealth of England issued coins with no royal portrait at all, simply bearing shields and stark English inscriptions, a radical departure from centuries of tradition. After the monarchy was restored in 1660, King Charles II embraced the new technology with gusto. In 1663, the Royal Mint stopped hammering coins altogether and all production became mechanized. This allowed for another innovation, milled edges with lettering on them, which finally put a stop to the age-old problem of clipping. A famous new gold coin was also introduced, the guinea. It was named after the region in West Africa where the Royal African Company sourced much of its gold, and early examples even featured a tiny elephant beneath the king's bust to show where the metal came from. The guinea became the prestige coin of the professional classes for the next 150 years. The following Georgian period, from 1714, was an age of industry and enlightenment, and the coinage reflected this. The Royal Mint, under the legendary leadership of Sir Isaac Newton as Master of the Mint, continued to raise its standards. However, a shortage of official silver and copper coins led to a big problem. Businesses started producing their own private tokens for people to use as small change. The solution came with the Industrial Revolution. In 1788, the engineer Matthew Boulton, in partnership with James Watt, developed a steam-powered coining press at his Soho manufactory in Birmingham. This incredible machine could produce high-quality coins with perfect precision, and in 1797 he produced the famous cartwheel pennies and twopences, the first official copper coins of the era. The reign of Queen Victoria from 1837 to 1901 was a time of unprecedented change, industrial might and imperial expansion, and honestly, the coins of her era tell this story perfectly. As the British Empire grew to cover a quarter of the globe, so too did the circulation of British currency. The image of Queen Victoria on a sovereign or a penny became one of the most recognized symbols of power in the world, used from Canada to Calcutta and from Sydney to South Africa. The coinage reflected the confidence of the age, with beautifully crafted designs by artists like William Wyon, whose young head portrait of the Queen is considered one of the finest in British numismatic history. We can actually trace Victoria's life through her coinage, which is a rather lovely and personal touch. The first coins show her as a young, graceful girl of 18. Later, the Jubilee head was introduced in 1887 to celebrate her 50 years on the throne, showing a still regal but more mature monarch wearing a small crown. Finally, the old head or veiled head portrait was issued in 1893, depicting the elderly queen as a solemn, veiled widow, the revered matriarch of a global empire. This progression from a young girl to a great-grandmother on the money people used every day created a powerful connection between the monarch and her subjects across the world. Not everything went smoothly, however. The Victorian era saw one of the biggest numismatic scandals in history with the introduction of a new coin, the florin, in 1849. It was worth 2 shillings and was an early experiment with decimalisation, being 1/10 of a pound. The problem was that the coin's inscription, Victoria Regina 1849, omitted the traditional DG for Dei Gratia, or by the grace of God. The public outcry was immediate and immense. The coin was quickly dubbed the godless florin and was seen as a grave insult to the nation's faith. It was swiftly replaced with a redesigned version that restored the divine reference. But the original remains a fascinating collector's item. As the century drew to a close, the reverse sides of the coins also began to feature more iconic national symbols. The image of a seated Britannia with her trident and shield, a fixture on copper coins for centuries, became more prominent and powerful than ever. The gold sovereign, with its classic depiction of St. George slaying the dragon designed by Benedetto Pistrucci, was minted in the millions not just in London but at branch mints in Australia, India and Canada. Victorian coins were more than just currency, they were ambassadors for Britain, projecting an image of stability, tradition and worldwide influence wherever they were spent. The 20th century was a period of dramatic upheaval, and British coins changed enormously to reflect the new realities. The century began with the short reign of Edward VII, followed by George V. The coins of George V are particularly interesting as they had to adapt to global crises. During the First World War, the government encouraged citizens to use paper money instead of gold sovereigns to help fund the war effort, effectively ending the circulation of gold coins in Britain for good. Later, during the Second World War, metal shortages became critical. In 1942, the Royal Mint had to stop using tin in the bronze alloy for pennies, and from 1944 they briefly made the 3-penny bit out of brass to save on nickel. The reign of Queen Elizabeth II, which began in 1952, saw the most radical transformation in British money for over 1,000 years. For centuries, the country had used the wonderfully complicated system of pounds, shillings and pence, with 12 pennies in a shilling and 20 shillings in a pound. But in an increasingly modern world, this system was seen as old-fashioned and inefficient. After years of debate, the decision was made to go decimal. On the 15th of February 1971, known as Decimal Day, the old system was swept away and replaced with the one we know today, where 100 new pence make £1. This was a massive undertaking that required a huge public information campaign. New coins like the 50 pence, 10 pence, 5 pence, 2 pence, 1 pence and half pence were introduced, and the beloved old pennies, half crowns and 3-penny bits gradually disappeared. It was the end of an era. Many people felt a sense of nostalgia and loss for the familiar coins they had grown up with. To ease the transition, the new 5 pence and 10 pence coins were initially the same size and value as the old shilling and florin, and could be used interchangeably for a time. The designs for the new coins by Christopher Ironside were modern and clean, breaking with the more traditional styles of the past. Alongside decimalisation, the coins of Elizabeth II's reign celebrated the nation's heritage in other ways. The reverse of the coins featured a range of British symbols. For many years, the penny showed a crowned portcullis, the symbol of Parliament. The 2-pence piece had the Prince of Wales's feathers, and the 5-pence piece had the Scottish thistle. The iconic 20-pence piece, with its distinctive 7-sided shape, was introduced in 1982, and the familiar £1 coin, thicker and more substantial than a banknote, arrived a year later in 1983. These coins became the everyday backdrop to the lives of millions of Britons for the rest of the century. As Britain entered the 21st century, its coinage continued to evolve, embracing new technologies and new ways of celebrating national life. One of the most significant developments was the introduction of bimetallic coins. The £2 coin, first issued for general circulation in 1998, was a striking example, with its golden-coloured outer ring of nickel brass and a silver-coloured inner disc of cupro-nickel. It was not only visually appealing but also much harder to counterfeit. This coin quickly became a favourite for commemorative issues, marking everything from the Rugby World Cup to the anniversary of the London Underground, turning our pocket change into a gallery of national achievements. In 2008, the country saw a complete redesign of its circulating coins, the first major overhaul since decimalisation. The artist Matthew Dent won a public competition with his ingenious jigsaw concept. Each of the coins, from the 1 pence to the 50 pence, featured a different section of the Royal Shield of Arms. When placed together in the correct arrangement, they formed the complete shield. The £1 coin featured the entire shield, completing the set. This clever and interactive design encouraged people, especially children, to look at their money in a new way and to appreciate the heraldry that represents the nations of the United Kingdom. By the 2010s, however, the familiar round £1 coin, which had been in circulation for over 30 years, was facing a serious problem. It was estimated that as many as 1 in every 30 of them were fakes. To restore public confidence, the Royal Mint embarked on a mission to create the most secure circulating coin in the world. The result, introduced in 2017, was the revolutionary 12-sided £1 coin. It's not just its shape that makes it secure, it also has a hidden high-security feature built into the coin itself and micro-lettering on the lower inside rim. Its design featured national floral emblems: the English rose, the Welsh leek, the Scottish thistle, and the Northern Irish shamrock, all growing from a single royal coronet. The 21st century has also cemented the role of coins as storytellers and commemorative objects. The Royal Mint now regularly issues special 50 pence and £2 coins to mark significant cultural and historical moments. We've had coins celebrating the Olympic Games in London, the worlds of Peter Rabbit and Paddington Bear, and anniversaries of major scientific discoveries. These coins are eagerly sought after by collectors, but also serve to bring history and culture into the hands of the general public. They are a way of creating a shared national memory, marking events that have shaped and defined the country in the new millennium. From the abstract swirls of Celtic gold to the high-tech security of the modern pound coin, the journey of British coinage is a magnificent reflection of the nation's own story. These small, durable objects have been at the heart of every major chapter of our history. They have been instruments of royal propaganda, tools of empire, and the daily currency of farmers, soldiers, merchants, and factory workers. They have survived invasions, civil wars, and economic crises, each one carrying the imprint of its time. To hold a coin is to hold a direct physical link to the people and events that have shaped the Britain we live in today. The coins in our pockets right now continue this long and proud tradition. They bear the portrait of our new monarch, King Charles III, marking the start of a new Carolean era, just as the coins of Charles II did over 350 years ago. The symbols on their reverse still speak of the union of the 4 home nations and celebrate our shared culture and heritage. Every time a new commemorative 50 pence is released to mark a royal jubilee, a scientific breakthrough, or a beloved children's author, it reinforces the idea that our money is more than just functional. It is a canvas for our national identity. In an age of digital payments and contactless cards, some might wonder if the physical coin has a future. But their resilience is remarkable. They remain a vital part of our economy and, perhaps more importantly, a part of our cultural fabric. They're often our first introduction to the concept of value, our first taste of economic independence. They are collected by schoolchildren, discovered by archaeologists, and studied by historians. They provide a tangible narrative of our monarchy, our artistry, and our technological progress, from the first rough hammer blows to the precision of a steam-powered press and the digital engraving of today.